Hey, good evening, everybody. Uneducated Economist here. So I got this one out of the FederalReserveHistory.org, and this is called Roosevelt's Gold Program. Now, I get a lot of people who ask me, it's just like, aren't we on the gold standard, or isn't our money backed by gold, or what happened to the gold standard, or why are we not on the gold standard anymore? So a lot of questions about what happened. And now this is back in 1933 to 1934. And this is a pretty decent little article, so I'll leave a link to it down there in the description. But I'm just going to read you a good chunk of this stuff here, guys. So it goes like this. The United States have been the de facto gold standard since 1830s and the de jure gold standard since 1900. In 1913, the gold standard was built into the framework of the Federal Reserve. The law required the Federal Reserve to hold an equal to 40% of the value of the currency it had issued, technically termed the Federal Reserve note, at a fixed price of $20.67 per ounce of gold. The Federal Reserve typically held more than enough gold to back the currency it had issued. Banks called the excess free gold. The Federal Reserve needed the stock of free gold sufficient to satisfy redemption requests that might occur in the near future. The Federal Reserve could increase the stock of free gold by increasing interest rates, which encouraged Americans to deposit in the banks and encouraged foreigners to invest in the United States, shifting gold from the pockets of the public, both here and abroad, into the vaults of the Federal Reserve District and the member banks. Conversely, the Federal Reserve lowered interest rates. Gold would flow from the coffers into the hands of the public, both at home and overseas. During the financial crisis of 1933, that culminated in the banking holiday in March of 1933, large quantities of gold flow out of the Federal Reserve. Some of this outflows went to individuals and firms in the United States. This domestic drain occurred because individuals and firms preferred to hold metallic gold to bank deposits or paper currency. So that was a key there, guys. It said that the domestic drain occurred because individuals and firms preferred to hold metallic gold to bank deposits or paper currencies. If you don't hold it, you don't own it, and they didn't want those paper promises. Some of the gold flowed to the foreign nations. This external drain occurred because foreign investors feared a devaluation of the dollar. Together, the internal and external drains consumed the Federal Reserve free gold. In March of 1933, when the Federal Reserve Bank of New York could no longer honor its commitment to convert currency to gold, President Franklin Roosevelt declared a national banking holiday. So that's what he was saying. In March of 1933, they had an issue. People had gone and done a run on the bank. They were pulling all their gold out of the bank. They would rather hold the gold coins because they knew that the Federal Reserve was up to no good with their printing presses. And it goes on to say here, it doesn't say that there, but we know a little bit better. And that's one of the things I liked about this article. Sorry, guys. One of the things I really liked about this is that it actually comes from the Federal Reserve. So it's not like it's coming from an anti-banker point of view. This is actually coming from their point of view, right? So it goes on to say, the Roosevelt administration policies regarding gold responded to the crisis. The policies unfolded through three phases. During the first phase, in the spring and summer of 1933, the Roosevelt administration suspended the gold standard. In March of 1933, the Emergency Banking Act gave the president the power to control international and domestic gold movements. It also gave the Secretary of the Treasury the power to compel surrender of gold coins and certificates. The administration waited before employing these powers in hope of the situation would correct itself, but gold flows continued. On April 20th, President Roosevelt issued a proclamation that formally suspended the gold standard. The proclamation prohibited exports of gold and prohibited the Treasury and financial institutions from converting currencies and deposits into gold coins and ingots. The action halted gold outflows. So right then he was basically saying that that's it. No more converting, paper for gold. It's over. And then in May of 1933, the administration once again weakened links to the gold. The Thomas Amendment to the Agricultural Relief Act gave the president the power to reduce the gold content of the dollars by as much as 50%. The president also received the power to back the dollar with silver rather than gold, or with or with both silver and gold, at silver's prices to be determined by the administration. So, yeah, they were saying right there is that this act basically saying that we had taken our gold, we'd taken it all in, we've issued out a bunch of paper dollars. Anybody who tried to issue paper dollars or give us back the paper dollars, we wouldn't give them any gold. And now we're going to revalue the gold from that $20.67 to an amount to be determined by the administration. Right? And that was back in May of 1933. So people were pretty freaked out by this point, I'm sure, you know. On June 5th, the congressional resolution abrogated gold clauses in all contracts with both government and private. Gold clauses guaranteed that contracts would be repaid in gold or in gold's monetary equivalent at the value set in 1900. A series of cases in the United States Supreme Court upheld the constitutionality of these actions. So if you're not quite sure of what just happened right there, what they were saying is that before this date where we're going to revalue the gold, any contracts that exist before this date will be repaid either in gold or in the monetary equivalent to that amount of gold set back in 1900. After they revalue the gold, we're not going to be paying back that value. So just to kind of give you an example, if there was a contract that existed that you had given up $265, or yeah, $200, what was it? It was essentially $200. Yeah, $206.70. You would have given up 10 ounces of gold, okay, because it was valued at $20.67. When you went to go redeem the contract, they paid you in dollars equivalent to that. So you got paid back in those $20.67 equivalent gold dollars, right? But today, or not today, but back then when they were going to revalue it, it went to $35. So you might have deposited 10 ounces with silver with them, or with gold with them. They're going to pay you back $206.70, right? And they're going to keep the remainder of the $350 that it's really worth. You understand what happened there? Because now the 10 ounces of gold is worth $350, but they're only going to pay you back $200 of it, because your contract existed prior to the gold revaluation. It goes on to talk a little bit more about this. Together, these measures Did I get through that? Yeah, held up. Okay. Together, these measures weaken the dollar's link to gold. The dollar's nominally retained its value, but the Department of Treasury would not exchange dollars for gold and forbade the Federal Reserve from doing so. The administration could at any time change the dollar's value or begin backing the dollars with silver. In the future, the government might or might not allow the conversion of paper dollars into gold or silver or both at some price that the government would announce at some point in the future. To ordinary men and women, in other words, the dollar's value in terms of gold and other goods was uncertain, right? So yeah, they were basically like, you know, the people right then were just like, oh my gosh, our money is just going to go totally worse. They're just printing up so much money here and they're never going to give us it back to us. And they basically said that to ordinary men and women. In other words, the dollar's value in terms of gold and other goods was uncertain. They just didn't know. They didn't know if they were going to wake up tomorrow and, you know, their $1 would buy them a bunch of stuff or if it wasn't going to buy them anything. They had no clue. The second phase of the Roosevelt administration gold policy began in October of 1933 with the inauguration of the Gold Purchase Plan. Now this is where it gets really good, guys. Okay, so remember they had all these contracts prior to the revaluation of gold, okay? And these contracts, they're going to get paid back in the $1,900. So they know these contracts are set at that $20.67. But they have the gold now, right? The government, basically, they got a hold of it. The Federal Reserve, they got a hold of it. They have the gold now. And this is what happens. This phase involved the deliberate devaluation of the dollar. The government did this by authorizing the Reconstruction Finance Corporation to buy gold at increasing prices. These purchases raised gold value in terms of dollars, conversely lowering dollars' values in terms of gold and in terms of foreign currency, whose value in gold remained pegged at the old prices. So you see that sleight of hand that they just pulled right there? The goal of these programs was to raise American prices of commodities like wheat and cotton, returning them to the level of 1926 before the beginning of the contraction. This reflation would counteract the deflation that had dragged the economy into the abyss. The reflation would relieve debtors, resuscitate banks, and revive businesses. The reflation would lower prices of the American goods abroad, encouraging exports, and raising prices of foreign goods in the U.S., discouraging imports. The third phase began in January 1934. With the Gold Reserve Act and the return of the stability, the new stability solidified the emergency measures enacted in 1933, resurrected the gold standard, and reestablished financial links between America and the rest of the world. At the time, the Roosevelt administration gold policies were controversial. Critics asserted that they were completely immoral and a flagrant violation of the solemn promise made in the Gold Standard Act of the 1900. The promises made to purchasers of the Liberty and Victory loans during World War I. Critics claim that these policies set the stage for an inflation of supply of credit and currency, which would trigger a speculative boom bigger than ever before and eventually end in a disastrous depression. Critics claim that these policies delayed economic recovery by frightening and confusing consumers and businessmen. So, yeah, basically what happened there, guys, if you're not quite familiar with it, to give you a quick rundown, in 1913, the Federal Reserve was enacted. They promised that they would not print too much money. They would inject money into the system during times of need and pull it back out of the system when things got too hot, right? And by 1933, they had printed way too much money. And they said, okay, listen, we need to pull in all the gold, right? And revalue the dollar. They revalued it and they promised. We promise. Foreign countries can always pick out their gold from us. And we promise we won't print too much money. By 1971, they had printed way too much money, and Nixon said, okay, that's it. Foreign nations can no longer cash in their gold for silver or gold for dollars. And we are going on a 100% debt-based currency, and we promise we will not print too much money. Okay, so here we are, 2019 now, 2019. Sorry, I keep writing 18 down on everything. It's been, what, 27 days now of the new year, and I still can't seem to stop writing 18 down instead of 19. But anyway, I hope you guys found that good. This is Uneducated Economist. You know, this is a pretty good article. You know, a lot of people are confused about the gold standard. They think that that Fort Knox still actually holds a bunch of gold that's back in the dollar. And from what I understand, I don't even know how much is actually there. I don't think anybody really knows. And from the amount that they even state that they have there, I think what it runs the government for like a couple months maybe, it's not even very much. So, you know, when it comes to saving your money in anything, I mean, you could have your money in stocks, you can have your money in fancy cars, right? You know, you might have a garage full of fancy cars. That's where your money's hidden at. You can have your money in a lot of different stuff, but the original money was gold and silver, okay? So that's where I put my savings. I'm not telling you to put your savings there. I'm just saying that's where I put it, because if I'm going to put my money into something, I'm going to put it into money, all right? It only makes sense to me that if I'm going to have savings, I might want to save it in the original form of money, and that's silver, all right? Uneducated Economist, talk to you guys later.